So what I'm going to share is, while we had our moments of glory, we've also had patches of challenges, and I thought these are a great opportunity for us to learn as well. So my thoughts are around sharing some of the thoughts from those learnings. So that's kind of the agenda. We'll look at some of the signs. Maybe some of you could relate to some of that. What's the diagnosis? What's behind those signs? And also, what are the alternative routes that you can take in terms of fixing this? Do you take the trouble to fix it ground up? Or do you take a shortcut of palming it off to someone who can do it better? Or do you go somewhere in between? But maybe the best is to avoid it in the first place. It's a little too late for us, but maybe for some of you it may not be too late, and hopefully we can have a good discussion at that point around that. So let's get to the company and the context. So Hemas Holdings is primarily operating in Sri Lanka, and we have an operation in Bangladesh as well. Family business, started as a family business. Since about 10 years ago, the family decided to list the company. Some of the family members exited, some of the family members stayed back. About 2 years back, we went through another transformation where up to that time, the kind of group CEO and the key positions in the management was still held by the original family members. And at that time, actually, it was transformed into completely an outside management team. Of course, the family members are there in the board. In terms of the areas that we are operating, it's a pretty diversified company. What we call wellness involves personal care in FMCG, hospitals and diagnostics business, pharma distribution, manufacturing of generics. Combine all these pretty much independent business is what we call our wellness cluster. When you move to leisure, we operate hotels, inbound and outbound travel services. And in mobility, this is not really technology mobility, but it's the mobility of people and goods. So that's the logistics side of our operation, which includes operating certain GSAs. Probably one of the last Emirates GSA is operated by us in Sri Lanka, Malaysian Airlines, and a few other airlines that we are supporting, plus the port operations and all of that. So it's pretty diversified, which is not abnormal in a country like, I think, Sri Lanka, where the economy was closed till about 1977. So the companies who've been operating for 50, 60 years, the way for them to grow was to move from an industry to industry when a particular industry kind of matures within that local market. And in contrast, you see companies that kind of emerged post 78 had a more global mindset and kind of went deeper in a particular vertical and had a more export-oriented mindset. So in that kind of a context, shared services was started 9 years ago, just together with the SAP ERP implementation. So SAP is a single instance implementation. Somebody has made a great decision, which I'm very happy with. I know some other companies going through a lot of hassle later on to bring all these things together. So I think the original expectations were around bringing some best practices in operating an ERP, master data management, and also certain efficiencies and cost benefit around the transaction processing. And it was done very well. This was, I think, a CIMA global case study 2 years into operation. And everyone was happy with the results the first 4 or 5 years. But since then, people start to wonder, because people change. It's not the same finance directors in the businesses. Everyone comes and questions each element of cost and start to wonder, is this the best way to operate? So the symptoms. People change, they come in, they look at the cost and say, this is becoming expensive. We paid so much last year, we are paying so much this year, what is going to be next year? Sounds familiar? So can't we do this cheaper? The businesses start to wonder, okay, we are paying so much for the shared services. I mean, surely we can do it cheaper than that. And sometimes they're right as well. Then the internal teams also wonder, what's in it for us? I mean, in our case, it was a team, the initial team was brought in from the businesses. So they were operating very aligned with the business. They were enjoying the same bonuses and all that the business enjoyed. Then they were shown this great promise of shared services, and that's where the world is going. It's a great opportunity, and you come there and you start punching in transaction after transaction after transaction. And after 5 years, you wonder, what am I doing here? So the people challenge is a real challenge. And the corporate HR, of course, they worry about the headcounts, pressure from the budgets and the finance guys. They, okay, we have shared services, but the functions that shared services are involved in, our headcount is still going up within the business itself. How is that? What's going wrong here? And there's pressure from them again. And the business CEO, yes, the first 4 or 5 years, everyone kind of remembers that there was a cost benefit, but soon everyone kind of accepts that as the normal and looks for something more. What else are we getting? What's the value add? Is it the best way to do something? So that expectation comes in as well. So moving slightly deeper as to what really goes through. And one other thing that I want to also mention is, in our context, I mean, there's no real cost arbitrage. Right? Our business is operating within Sri Lanka, and the shared service is also operating in Sri Lanka, which is anyway a pretty low-cost destination for outsourcing work. So there's no real cost difference whether the business hires someone or the shared services hire someone. So if you want to deliver a cost advantage, it's really about driving efficiencies, adopting best practices, technology, all of that in a concentrated way is the only way to actually deliver some cost benefit to the business. So this is kind of my view of it, and then I've seen some case studies that kind of proves this point. So I think when you start a shared services, the FTE cost of a shared services becomes more competitive for a certain quantum of work. But as you go along, the shared services is also exposed to the inflations and all that, especially in our environment, and that cost keeps going up. But if the business thinks and evaluates every year, okay, we have the opportunity to recruit a fresh set of people from the market. At some point, there's the danger that that cost of actually acquiring someone from the market becomes cheaper than the FTE cost within the shared services. Of course, you can avoid it if you know about it, and if you've taken adequate measures and brought in innovations and automations and all that from day one. But that is in our case, and I think I've read in many other cases, it has not happened. Because the first 4 or 5 years you deliver clear value, and often you don't really see this coming. So this was the first realization for us. Second thing is transaction focus. I mean, we need this because efficiency kind of is core to delivering that cost advantage. But at the same time, over time, people kind of lose the context. What are we actually trying to deliver here? Is it just punching a transaction? Should we be sensitive towards the massive amount of data that we are coming across? Is there anything more that we can do? Probably the guys in the shared services understand the patterns and the let's say the picture of the numbers more than the business. But do we do anything about it? because we are still so focused around just punching in transactions and becoming almost a machine. So with that, people just doing the same thing over and over again, well-defined scope, good boundaries, SLAs in place, and we deliver that every month. Everyone seems happy. It drives efficiency, but we forget that there are other opportunities. We forget that there's opportunity to expand beyond what we originally scoped as what shared services can do. I mean, if it's account payable, for example, maybe there was a certain scope. You start from here and you finish it here and you have a handoff. But what about expanding those boundaries? As you master a particular piece, I think there's great opportunity to, and there's greater value that you can deliver to the business if you can keep expanding that. The growth of the internal organization. So I think while the shared service obviously is under a microscope because you want to bill for what are the work that you do to the businesses. I mean, businesses go by the budgets and delivering a profit number. So as long as that's happening, I mean, they have enough opportunity to just bring people saying, okay, this is urgent, that is urgent, this is more important. So the same level of scrutiny is not there within the business. So there's real danger that they kind of add headcount. But the danger to the shared services is one day somebody wakes up and say, okay, what is the cost of operating finance across board? You pay so much to the shared services, and these are your internal costs. You take percentages out of revenue and all that and say, no, this doesn't sound right. Cut it down. From where does the business start? Let's talk to the shared services, right? That's how the conversation starts. They think that the cost should go even further low in the shared services. I think we talked about a 40% staff attrition. In our case, it's kind of the opposite. I think people have been very careful in terms of saying, okay, we should retain this set of people. It works, but also it has its own dangers. Because there is a certain level of stagnation that sets in, and also there's cost inflation that takes place. So it's something that we need to really think through. And I think also when you apply the same policies that you apply in the businesses, within the shared services, again, that's something that we need to question how prudent that is. And I think shared services need to run as a business. That business same thinking should exist within the shared services. Sometimes we take it for granted, okay, we are there for this, and we deliver that. I think if we start to think like that, we are not a shared services, we are almost like an internal department. So that's another challenge that we have faced. And again, I think if you read case studies, there are companies kind of get to this over time. So where do you fix it? So we looked at two alternatives. First, we really believed that calling the experts is the right thing to do. Scale was a challenge. We're just one business and trying to run a shared services. And the second thing is we thought, okay, I mean, there's many people out there, the bigger companies with a bigger resource pool, exposed to global best practices, best technology in place. So surely they can do this better than us. The second option is, no, we are going to bite the bullet and we are going to do some fixes. So we are pretty serious and bullish about outsourcing our shared services to another party. One of the top 4 companies were looked at after discussing with a couple of other companies. It would have given us some short-term gains because they have the immediate scale, so obviously the cost inflations and all that can be on check. They would bring best practices, and so we can expect some good results fast. But at the same time, during the conversation, what we also felt was we're just talking about the same thing. I mean, we're only just focusing on the cost side of things, not so much the value, not so much the kind of the strategic value a shared services can add. So I completely, I think, agree with Venkat, who also positioned shared services as a more of a strategic importance. So this decision kind of got a backseat because we started really thinking, is this what we really want to do? And there's a bit of context to it, because 2 years ago we also set 2 agendas. One is around leadership development, other one was around innovation. So innovation was put high on the agenda, driven by the group CEO across the company. So in that context, we felt just continuing even with the best-in-class outsourcing provider, who still thinks around the transactions and transaction efficiencies, would not be the best way forward. So with that, we thought we'll do some corrections. So in correcting, we also saw, we did benchmarking with, so we have an organization called SLASCOM, which is essentially the IT BPO organization, equivalent of NASCOM in India. And they do salary surveys, and we've compared, obviously our salaries were higher because these were internal employees transferred with a good increment at that point, and continuous increments parallel to our business. So if you look at certain roles that they play and what they get paid, it's far above than the kind of the median or even the, let's say, the 66th percentile of the salary surveys. So how do you fix this? Again, one obvious way would be a VRS, virtual retirement scheme. You pay a compensation and you kind of start to correct the baseline. Obviously, this is driven by the regulation and the standards in each country. And for us, this is a very high cost. But also there's this fear of losing experience coming in. I think losing experience has, again, 2 components. One is real, one is not so real. The not so real part is, if you have not done our job properly, the knowledge is not within the institution, it still remains with people, which is a bad place to get to. But we found in certain areas we are like that. So when we say we are losing the experience and the knowledge, it would have been avoidable. It could have been avoided. But in certain areas we were exposed. But then there's that inherent knowledge, the tacit knowledge that people gain by servicing a particular business or a particular set of business, working with a certain set of people. They know how that business works, ticks, and they have that sense. So that's a bit difficult to capture always. So that's something that we had to think about. But from our point of view, we looked at all of these and we thought this is probably not the route that we want to take. Although that was an option that we seriously considered. So the second thing is, if you are going to keep these people, how do we really tap into that knowledge that we were in fear of missing out on? So here actually we had discussions with each of these people and trying to understand what in their own minds, what they thought they could do more. And that list was growing. And then we actually went to the business to figure out of all that, what the business values. Some were very simple things. I mean, we closed the accounts, we just passed the P&L and the rest of the financial statements to the business. But we also notice a lot of things within that. We notice a lot of things from last month to this month. We notice a lot of things from last year to this year. But that is just stays within shared services. But we felt, and some of the business said, okay, can you put that inside and give us your observations? So that was a very quick win, just leveraging on that experience and adding a lot of value to the businesses, the customers. And we are finding more and more cases around that. But I think the most important thing is a trial that we are doing with one of our businesses, the hospitals. which is a complicated business in itself, is actually to move into real business partnering. As we talked about, I think there was a great case study yesterday, I think from Coca-Cola. Here, actually, I'm talking about business partnering, but also kind of how you do it. And in our case, what we're trying is we have a role called business partner. And that business partner sits 50% within shared services, is responsible for the final delivery to the business. So the last week and the first week of the month is more concentrated on shared services, making sure the accounts are closed properly and all these deliverables go. But the rest of the 2 weeks is to spend time in the business physically. In our case, it's easy. For some of the global companies, it may not be viable to do it on a monthly basis. But it's for the business to feel this person has the interest of the business at heart. And he has the ability to leverage the resource pool within shared services to deliver certain projects or better outcomes for the business. And from shared services, he's like your business development guy for that business to understand what they actually think about the shared services and also to uncover a lot of new opportunities. The second thing is around how do you actually improve cost. I think shared services by nature, I mean, we are focused around that. We do drive efficiencies, we do automations, but typically within the scope that we operate in. But I think what we found was like if we go beyond that, and if we just look at the end-to-end process, which sits between the business and sometimes starting from the suppliers, the business, shared services, going back to the business and maybe the banks, you take that entire process and you try to optimize it, there's a lot more cost that you can eliminate. So we did that in a couple of examples. In one case, we lost the entire business because we proved that there's too much of duplication. And towards the end of it, when we had an honest discussion, we felt that business is better to actually handle that part of the work. So it went out of the shared services. But overall, I think we delivered what a shared service is expected to do, which is to add value to the business and not to operate shared services as a business and make profit. So other thing that we are learning is business have their own struggles and their own challenges. They want to do a lot of things, but they're also stuck in their operations, in their cycles. So they also don't have bandwidth. And when you look at shared services, I mean, typically you have a peak and a kind of a valley. I mean, the middle 2 weeks are a little soft. And the last week and the first week of the month, I mean, that's where the pressure is around closing accounts, communicating, clarifications, and all that. So what we said is like, let's start using those 2 weeks to help the businesses. So analytics is one particular area. From an IT perspective, we are a little behind in the analytics area, so we don't have great platforms or tools for the end users to do their own reports and all that. So what we are promoting is what we call analytics as a service. So if the business wants certain information, certain thing analyzed, they just shoot an email. And between shared services and IT, they will figure it out. They will figure out where the data is, bring all that data together, do the analysis, and give that report as a service, apart from some of the standard kind of monthly reports. And sometimes the new projects, in the hurry of getting things done, we've found that assets are not classified right in the books, and the business has no time. So that was another opportunity that we had. So like that, I think when you start having a closer relationship with the business, you will see more and more opportunities to work very closely with the business. So the other important thing is the governance structure. This is still not in place. I think so there's this whole debate about, do you mandate the use of shared services, or is it kind of free economy, optional service that you deliver? Is it negotiable by the business? I think the answer is kind of yes or no, yes and no. I think for you, especially in a captive scenario, for you to sustain, I think you need to mandate a certain set of services, which also go in hand with the kind of the governance that you want to have in place, driving standards and all that as well. But certain areas can be kept flexible. But also what we wanted to avoid was the kind of the annual haggling process that we were going through in terms of the cost negotiations. So now what we're doing is we are actually creating an operating board consisting of FTs from the businesses so that they're fully exposed to the cost structures and the thinking and the innovation projects within the business. So that they're aware and they can share that with their colleagues so that it doesn't become a daily affair of is it too costly or not or whatever. So they have a say within the budgets and the inflations and the initiatives that actually takes place within the shared services. I think this is the most important thing. This is, I think, by Jack Welch actually. If the rate of change is faster in the external environment than the internal environment, then end is near. This is not always easy in a shared services environment because everyone is concentrated on what needs to be done today, delivering the SLAs, processing the payments, collecting the payments, making sure the books are closed. It's very transaction driven. So for us to break this, we have to do something. And let's get our imagination running a bit. Let's assume this stage is actually part of a river, a pool of water, a water kind of going that way. And let's say this is actually a ledge. How many of you are willing to jump from, let's say, top of that screen to this water? If it's deep enough, you will not knock your head. You are wearing a helmet, you are wearing a life jacket. Who will jump? Yeah, we have a few brave people. We got everyone in our shared services to jump, physically and in real. This is called canyoning. So you can, so just like whitewater rafting, but this is actually you use your body to do these things. You need to do it with professionals. Don't just go and jump. But what it does is actually when you do something that you thought you could not, I mean, you really get pumped with adrenaline. So immediately after that, we did a workshop, and that's how we kind of brought the whole innovation agenda to the table, and we created different teams focused on issues that they themselves said are important for shared services to solve. Cost being part of it, carriers being part of it, and many other issues that they thought the businesses are facing, the opportunities that they saw. So we have 5 teams working on different themes. And that exercise kind of helped us get them kind of open up, be positive, and embrace some change. So the last slide. I think the best solution is to avoid it. And I think it can be avoided if you kind of understand how the dynamics work and have that business engagement, have that focus on how you manage cost, how you continuously add value to the business, and expand the scope of what you do. So how we do things is important, but what we do is probably even more important. Often we keep changing how we do things, the continuous kind of improvement, but we don't focus enough on what we do. I think that's part that we missed, and I think that's an important part to keep in mind as well. And we should not think our responsibility is just within the shared services walls. We should take the responsibility and be the agent of change for the organization. And then actually there's a lot more value that we can deliver. And I think it's fundamentally keep asking the question, why are we here? Are we here to punch in some transaction? Or are we really here to make a big difference to the organization and help organization achieve its vision, the mission, the ambitious growth targets? Are we going to be part of that journey? So I think in our case, we have said yes to that, and our thinking and everything that we do is along those lines. So that's pretty much it. Thank you for your attention, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to share these thoughts.
We've got quite a few questions, Chandima. So
all right.
if you can just stay on stage for a minute.
Sure.
Big contributors to midlife crisis of a shared service organisation are, one, how detached the SS organisation is to the function, and two, the people who may be transaction fatigued, not engaged anymore, and doesn't see future in the organisation. What is your take on making the shared service organisation as a talent feeder?
That's a very good point. I think that's one of the suggestions made by actually our group CFO. Especially it didn't start that way, but it came from our observation that individual businesses go and actually pick people, or not pick people, actually expand their own teams. So what we are now thinking is to have some kind of structure. And in terms of addressing our internal challenges, we have identified 4 levels. And the top 2 levels, we have said, need to be transferable within the broad organization of Hemas. So if at that level, you should be, if there's opportunity within the business, we feed those people into the business, as well as we want to bring some people from the business to the shared services. We should not see shared services as an isolated box anymore. So that's definitely, I think is a good way to look at it. And I think we have got the support of the group CFO. We are working with the HR folks to figure out a structured way to adopt that.
Okay, good. We've got quite a lot of questions on talent management, and we've got a panel session tomorrow afternoon. So for those that ask those type of questions, we'll pull them all into that session.
Sure.
So 2 more. Do you recommend implementing shared services as part of an ERP transition, or stabilize the processes before centralizing it in an SSE?
Yeah, I don't really think there's a right answer. I think it really boils down to how you actually execute whichever method you adopt. But coming from the IT side, I think if you do it together with a let's say an ERP rollout type of thing, I think there's a lot of opportunity to optimize on both ends, both on the kind of the technology sustenance of some of the practices that you need to have in place to get the best value of out of ERP, and I think we were debating that. We all debate that on a daily basis. So I think you can kind of capture some of that opportunity if you do it together, is my view.
Okay, good. And last question, how do you upskill the team as we try to get over the hurdle of initial transaction focus phase to a more value added phase?
That's a tough one. So in our case, we felt like maybe 50% are hard to crack. They themselves sometimes don't really see a life beyond transactions, and they feel that's what they're made out to do. But fortunately, there's another half who, on their own kind of initiative, found opportunities to say, can I do this? Can I do this? And it was then up to the leadership to kind of match those kind of possibilities and have the dialogue with the business to see what can be done. And then I think you need to take small steps. I mean, you can't take someone and say, okay, now you be an analyst tomorrow, or you do analytics tomorrow. But see, like, I mean, what they do, and combine with that with the experience, can we give a better output to the business? I think that's the approach that we took, small steps.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you.